What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. It is another episode of The Unfiltered Truth after a week off of trying to get our thoughts together and get some good topics for you guys. We are back. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, my co-host, and just partner in crime, James Shook. How's it going, James?
Doing well today. Going to give a shout out to our sponsors right away here. We've got northcobbspine.com. We're going to have it scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Really appreciate all the support these guys have given us. If you guys have any chiropractic or physical medicine needs, make sure you check out North Cobb Spine. That's North Cobb Spine and Nerve in Ackworth, northcobbspine.com. And we do have these beautiful artwork pieces behind us that we spoke of last week. I think we went into a little more detail. If you guys want more detail on that, you can go back and reference the previous episode. But these are made by a lady named Chantel. That's Chantel, which is Shantel. That's Chantel at chantelcreations.com. So if you guys are interested in any of these, be sure and get in touch with them. Throw some support their way, and they'll keep throwing support our way, and the world keeps going around merrily.
So what happens, we're super thankful for our sponsors, cool artwork, everything that goes on, you guys, the audience. We can't do it without you. I think this podcast has gotten well beyond anything we thought it would be. Initially kind of started out as a fun thing, and it's blown up. So I can definitely, I think, speak for both of us when I say James and I are sincerely grateful for the support and everything.
Absolutely.
So, James, it's been a week. How you been, man? Everything good?
Yeah, so far so good. Been getting a lot of training in, and I know we had some UFC fights this last weekend. I think we're going to talk about a little bit here, kind of kick us off today.
Yeah, man. Like you said, we had a little bit of training. We did our first training class together. Thought it went well. I had 6 or 7 students the first one, so it went good. And UFC just 252 just happened. Biggest heavyweight fight in, I think, MMA history. And another couple good fights, but we just want to cover the big two before we get into the serious topics of the day. So for those of you all that don't watch MMA, sorry, but we're going to cover this real quick. Let's talk about Marlon Vera and Sean O'Malley. What'd you think about that fight, the results, and kind of everything that happened, and as far as his injury and things, your professional opinion?
Yeah, I think prior to the injury that they highlighted, which was later on in that round, there was a time previous before that, maybe 30, 45 seconds or a minute before that, where they were up against the cage, and it looked like O'Malley went. I don't know if he was about to shoot in for a takedown or whatnot, but he definitely winced hard on that ankle. So it looked like he'd already injured it at that point. I know that any of the highlights or the recaps that I've seen on it, they've really focused on the second portion, I guess, where he actually got closer to the center of the ring and looked like he may have been going to shoot for a takedown. I'm not sure. He's definitely stepped forward pretty hard on that right leg. And, subsequently you saw what happened, once he was on the ground. I think Marlon just kind of recognized that there was blood in the water and went after him.
Yeah, a lot of people were questioning the stoppage by Herb Dean. I thought it was a very good stoppage. If you go back, a couple of different websites did a good job of kind of breaking down the stoppage, and you could clearly see O'Malley was out. It was a flash KO probably, but he was out. You could even see when Herb Dean was standing on top of him, he was kind of turtled up like this, like thought he was still under assault, and he wasn't. So I think good job Herb Dean on that, especially since he's been getting a lot of crap lately from other people about taking too long to stop the fight. And I thought he did a good job looking out for O'Malley and his health. So good job to Herb on that.
I agree. I think the ref did a great job there. I mean, O'Malley, he was still taking some damage. He wasn't necessarily defending. He was in a defensive position overall, but I'm not sure how aware he was at the incoming punches and strikes that he was receiving. So to me, it looked like a good stoppage. You guys let us know in the comments what you guys think about that stoppage, and maybe we'll bring it back up towards the end of the show if you guys throw some comments out there.
Yeah, after all our seriousness. Obviously, the big fight of the weekend was DC and Stipe, the trilogy fight, basically the rubber match between the two. DC won the first one, Stipe won the second. And like a lot of people thought that this one would go the distance because of their 2 fights together, with them being such high-level athletes, it did. And Stipe won via unanimous decision. Most judges gave him 4-1. I think one judge gave it to him 3-2. I thought very good decision, very good fight. The eye poke was an unfortunate thing, but in my opinion, those kind of things happen. Those gloves suck. There's Trevor Whitman has invented new gloves, but the UFC doesn't want to go to them because of their sponsorships and all those things. But all in all, I think it's a good fight. Congrats to DC. I love the dude because he's a firefighter. He's a first responder. and he's a world champion fighter. It's crazy to see somebody like that, volunteer in his community, or not volunteer, but serve his community, and still be able to maintain that high of a level. That should be super motivating for any of our kids, any of our young people out there to understand that you can do those things.
Yeah, and getting back to the eye poke with the fingers extended, I know the refs are real big on at least stepping in from time to time, telling some of the fighters that they need to watch their fingers being extended, and they need to keep their hand more in a closed fist. But the reality of that is a lot of the guys keep their hands open for the potential grapple situation. There's a lot more going on than just putting your hands up and balling your fist up and throwing punches. So it's completely understandable why the guys have their hands open. They do reach a lot, and I understand that that's going to be a problem. But eye gouging is part of the game. It's going to happen. It's just like anything that's unintentional against the rules. They're going to happen from time to time. Do they look intentional sometimes on camera, and are some of them intentional? I'm sure they are. But for the most part, the visual is always going to look worse than the actual. So. It's an unfortunate thing, but I think the fight ended, and it was the correct outcome. I couldn't argue with the scoring.
Yeah, I mean, and congrats to DC for a great career. My opinion, he's a great ambassador of the sport. I think you've heard that said by several people. I think him and Stipe are probably the two best that UFC has right now overall. I mean, DC's got his hands in commentating and schools and wrestling and all that other stuff. So I think the next phase of his life, and hopefully he sticks with it, because I don't know about you, but I hate to see guys stick around too long in any kind of a sport, to where they kind of taper off and fall off.
Randy Couture.
What?
Randy Couture.
Yes. I mean, Chuck Liddell. I mean, you can name so many of them. I mean, then you can go to other sports. We could talk for an hour just about that. But hopefully he rides off the sunset, to still be, I think he's 41 or 42 is what they said now, right?
Yeah.
You're still winning rounds at that age. I know it's hard to let go against somebody like Stipe, but I hope he takes it, and I hope he moves on the next phase of his career and does his thing and kind of lets the whole getting hit in the face thing go, and goes and makes some money. So that's kind of my final thoughts on all good card. What about you?
Yeah, good card. I think Stipe also continued to serve at the fire department during most of his training and lead up to this fight. Is that correct?
Yeah, he did. He served up until, I think, he went to official camp, so 4 or 6 weeks out, because they didn't, obviously UFC had their bubble protocol, and they didn't want him to have him get quarantined or anything like that and possibly endanger the fight. But yeah, Stipe, I don't even think he could even train in his gym till like 4 weeks out, so because of all the restrictions in Ohio, and so congrats to him for that, man. It takes a lot of dedication to be that high level, to go get somebody like Stipe. Or against DC, and to show out like that. And a fun fact for those of y'all who don't know, and may not know this, is Stipe has never been taken down more than one time in a single fight his entire career, and he's faced DC 3 times. That's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, hats off to him. I think some people even mentioned or suggested asking the question if Stipe was looking at retirement as well, maybe, I guess, because of his age or whatnot. And I think his response was pretty definite as far as he wasn't looking to retire, and as long as he could continue to perform, he was going to stay with it. So, hey man, congrats to that guy. He's a tough guy.
Yeah, he's the man. So he's the man. So if you guys like our quick little UFC recap, please let us know in the comments. We're trying to kind of diversify our podcast a little bit, not stay on the hot topics all the time and the tough ones, but we are going to get some hot ones. James and I were having a text message conversation the past couple of days, and he got a little heated about a couple of things going on. So I'm going to kick it over to James for our first topic, and kind of let you get things started, brother. What you got?
All right. So, I'm gonna start out here. I've got some notes here too as well. So I'm gonna shift through my notes so I don't get myself sidetracked. But no, I was looking at censorship. I know we did an article or a whole episode on censorship, and we talked about this in depth in the last episode or so, and of course it's going to keep coming up because it's at the forefront of media and what's being broadcast right now. So one of the things that I thought was very interesting from the news this week was I read an article that came out that was suggesting that the Department of Homeland Security was actually putting together plans, or I don't remember if it was necessarily a task force, but they they were starting to essentially organize themselves so that if they had come election day, if they were saying if the current president were to lose the election, they were looking really hard at a lot of what some of us would call patriots. They were looking at some militia groups, and they didn't name any of these groups. They just kind of lumped them into one big sum and said, we're looking at having to address this as potential terrorist activity. And some of this activity that I believe that they're alluding to would be very similar to the activity that we're currently seeing in some of the states and some of the cities in the United States right now with Antifa and some other organizations that are openly on the streets, that are, tearing cities apart, burning stuff down, harassing people, dragging folks out of their car. And I'm not seeing DHS or anyone let alone going into the cities and actually doing something physically about it. But I'm not seeing them even talk about it whatsoever in the media as far as addressing the problem. And I know that the Attorney General has put some federal agents out to protect some federal monuments and federal property or whatnot. But the DHS article reads that they're looking at their plans to address the people physically in the streets if they're opposing what happens on election day, should the president lose that election, while they're intentionally not doing anything about what is currently going on. And they have access to do it. If they want to go fight a battle, there's one waiting on them right now in Portland, Oregon. They should jump all over it, but I don't hear anybody saying anything about that. And I'm highly suspect that it could be falling across party lines, which might be why they're not addressing this. And as far as political bias, I'll leave it at that.
Sure. Kind of hit on a couple things that you said that, are a little disheartening, a little concerning, right? You said something that I completely think is bad. You didn't say anything bad, just what's happening is this idea that if the president loses, we're making plans. Okay, we're not going to make plans for if he wins of what's going to happen, because let's be real, the protests going on right now in cities all over America are not pro-Trump people. They're not. I mean, let's be 100% honest. There could be some in there that may have issues with the police, and that's the guys that they're protesting under. But at this point, you can tell it's very far left wing. It's the extremist. I'm not going to say it's all liberals, because it's not. But it's the far left. It's left-wing extremists. How many times have we heard that statement uttered on the media? I can tell you zero. I haven't heard Antifa even referred to as an extremist group. We've gotten threats on our podcast messages and stuff that I delete because there's no place for that. I've gotten messages on Facebook Messenger, people veiled threats towards me and towards us for what we're talking about here, that if you go to their page, they're Antifa because it says that they're anti-fascist people on their websites. But I understand that they're, probably in their mom's basement screaming about, meatloaf and playing, COD and all these other things, and that's all they have time to do. But you don't see the media reporting it down the middle. And that's the problem I have. And you don't see it on either side, to be honest, to, both sides of it. Yeah. If you go to, let's take Portland, to your point, the gentleman that was attacked and kicked in the head, there's some reports saying he's dead. There's some saying he's in a coma. Either way, if you see the video, it's sickening. I'm not going to show it because it's just disgusting. He gets dragged from his car. He gets beat. He's sitting there on the phone with his wife. Someone kicks him in the head. It was a black person kicking a white person in the head. That's just is what it is. A liberal kicking another person in the head because he is, I don't know what the other guy's political affiliation is that got kicked. But the perp that kicked him even went on his Snapchat and said, "Oh, I just kicked a racist in the face. I may be facing murder charges."
Of course, he picked him out because he was driving down a road.
Right. And we talked about in our class that very thing, right? So
that's terrorism. You're just doing some normal everyday stuff, and someone is offended by it and drags you out of your car and beats you nearly to death, or to death in this situation, possibly. And nobody's addressing that. Maybe I'm the weird one here, but I don't think so. I mean, last time I checked, we had the rule of law and order here in the United States, and if you look around today, you wouldn't think so. Especially if you watch the news and see what's going on in the media. They seem to highlight a lot of this, and it's almost to the point where they're not putting it up necessarily to to try to say that we would rather not see this kind of stuff. This is a bad example of how society is acting. They're putting it up, almost condoning it, and I'm just not seeing a whole lot of media coverage, or in media. Media is one thing.
Right.
We actually have the department heads here that are not covering, or they're just not addressing any of this violent activity that's going on in these cities. And it's extremely concerning, especially when they're suggesting that if patriots get out and go to try to defend themselves against these thugs, they don't have a problem. I bet they'll show up then and they'll start arresting people when you fight back. And that seems to be the case already. And it's just very disheartening to see that.
Well, case in point, I want to hit on Jeremy's point since he's commented a couple times. First, he complimented your studio. Your studio is looking quite sick. I got to see it in person before our class, so good job on that. And then Jeremy hits on this, and I think it's going to lead me into kind of my next point. I want to bounce some things off you, James, and see what you think about it. Groups that are actually involved in domestic terror currently are viewed not so by the mainstream media. It's such obvious bias perpetrated by them. I agree, Jeremy. James, what are your thoughts on that comment?
Oh, it's absolutely evident, and this example that we just spoke of is a prime example of just that.
Yep, and let's hit on one thing that we can give an example in our home state is here in Georgia. We've had two different protests at Stone Mountain within the past 2-3 months at this point. One was INFAC, and the other one was allegedly some 3% group from Alabama. I think is what the news was reporting. Honestly, being honest with everybody, I haven't done enough research to see what the actual group was that went out there just because I'm sick of looking at it. But you had INFAC, the Not Fucking Around Coalition, I think is what they're called. They protested at Stone Mountain, were escorted by the police. There was no huge police presence there, despite there being a ton of people armed with rifles, which is fine by state law. I'm not questioning that. We've covered that in our classes. You being armed in a park in Georgia with a rifle is perfectly fine as long as you're not a felon. No issue there. The issue I have, and I want to know your thoughts on this, James, is the responses that we had. So the first group comes and there's a police escort. They're literally escorted through Stone Mountain. The police are there for them. Okay. This is coming from a former law enforcement officer. They're there, they're escorting. They were told ahead of time that INFAC was coming. The police knew it. And the park was, I believe, closed that day anyways, but the police knew. So they sent a couple officers to escort them, help them out, do whatever, which is fine. Then, and they're actually allowed to go there without a permit, from what I understand. Then, miraculously, a right-wing extremist group, is how the media was saying it, called Stone Mountain ahead of time, said, hey, we want to protest there, and they're denied a permit. Okay, so they're denied a permit. The group shows up anyways, and then the police show up in riot gear and all these other things. And there was no violence from the police towards the protesters, so shout out to our law enforcement guys for doing their thing and doing the job that nobody wants to do these days. But there were some skirmishes, fights, whatever you want to call it, between the two groups. And it was reported on the media that the right-wing extremist group were the ones responsible for all the violence. So my thoughts, or my question to you, James, is why do you think this is being reported this way? And why do you think, from a civilian perspective, since I have the law enforcement bias that I know, why do you think the responses were different from law enforcement and both the park in these two instances?
Well, I mean, it fits the popular trend that we're seeing lately. I mean, it only goes directly along with it. It's being widely broadcast that patriotism in the United States, or someone that stands up for their rights, or that wants to drive down a road and go about their way and their commute, and if they get stopped by a group of people with no other reason to be in the road other than to harass people, then that seems to be these people are protesting, and they're doing the right thing, and they're looking for change, and they're really putting out a good relation to the public of, you should get out and exercise your rights to protest. But that's just clearly not what's going on. There's nothing organized. This isn't like MLK organizing protests and marches back in the day that actually had some kind of result to them. In many of these cases, we don't know who the leaders of these places are. So if you don't even have direct contact with your legislators, and you don't have a liaison from this group that is able to communicate back and forth, then what are you out there actually doing? You're not actually protesting you're protesting for whatever the latest trend is that morning when you get up and you read your Twitter feed, or you get on Facebook, or you get on Instagram or something like that. And that's not a protest that's going to lead to anything useful. There's no legislation coming out of it. I mean, clearly, I haven't even seen a list of legislation that's been asked for from any of these groups. So to answer your question, when you have the media reporting on the response groups that go out and confront these individuals or these groups or organizations that are coming out and doing these, they're not protests. I mean, they're borderline rioting. And at the very least, it's some criminal activity, and they're preventing other folks from exercising their constitutional rights. When you have those groups that the media are saying are responding to this, and those groups are being labeled potential threats or terrorist groups, or I think everything's being wiped into this one. And I'll go ahead and say this one phrase: white supremacy.
Yep.
So patriots are now being labeled someone that does not want their city torn apart and wants to show up to try to keep the peace, or to try to at least be an opposing organization versus another organization that may be doing some criminal activity in the street. You're now labeled a terrorist organization, and furthermore, you're labeled a racist or a white supremacy group. And the phrase racism is getting used so much, it has no effect anymore whatsoever. I don't think anyone knows the meaning of it anymore. And then it's a fun catchword: white supremacy. You're a white supremacist if you don't agree with people burning cities down, and it's just not true. And and I know people of all ethnicities that do not agree with this whatsoever. And so I guess you'd have to label all of those white supremacists, regardless of their age or color or their preferences or anything like that. They just fall into one big category of white supremacy.
Yeah, sure, and that's kind of what we're seeing these days, and that's the problem I have with a lot of stuff going on. And I like to think of myself as a middle of the road guy on a lot of issues. I'm all about the First Amendment. I didn't have as much of an issue with the group being out there protesting the first time because I am a believer in the First and Second Amendments, and that's fine that they're allowed to protest. But when the second group wants to come protest, you got to let them do it too. You can't just let these people do it and then not let these people do it. And that's a huge problem in America today. It's, you got the cancel culture, you got people being offended. This will actually probably take us in our next topic, the false rage or faux rage, which if any of you are Facebook friends with me personally, you've seen I've been kind of on a kick about that for the past week, and we'll get into that in a second. But it's just disheartening that we're lumping everybody into groups, right? You can't have an opinion.
Segregation. Digital segregation.
Segregation, yeah, 100%. And that brings me to, I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the topics I want to talk about today. There's a clothing store in Savannah, speaking of segregation and not doing things that are right. There's a clothing store in Savannah that is currently charging people of color, we'll use their exact words, $20 to make an appointment to come shop for clothes in the thrift store. And they're not allowing white people an appointment to come in there, but yet they're profiting off the fact that somebody is not white to come in there. You pay me, and then you can come shop for your stuff, but we're not going to let white people in here. And they've been getting blasted on Facebook, on social media, and things like that, which is kind of refreshing to see. I went on their page and left them a crappy review just because I'm petty like that. But I don't, and I know you're the same way, James. I'm sure your students and stuff, you have multiple ethnicities, ages, everything going on in your gym. And none of us got time for that. For America to heal and for America to get back to where we need to be, we can't continue to do this whole, I'm a CNN guy or I'm a Fox News guy, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, and if you don't agree with me, I can't deal with you. And that's the problem that the media continues to perpetuate, is they politicize everything. They weaponize our children, which is going to get me into the false outrage thing here in a second. And they just continue to use the things that matter to us against each other to keep us infighting, so we won't recognize what's going on. Like, to hit on Jeremy's point earlier, it's an obvious bias that's going on, and we continue to allow it to happen, and we don't hold them accountable. And if you guys go back to our episode with Lance Russo, he made a comment about the media that I've used several times since then, is that the media doesn't have to get it right. They just have to get it quickly. And until that changes and they have to be held accountable, we're going to continue to have these problems. And I'll leave the last point on that topic to you, and we'll jump to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we could just see fair enough reporting to say, we didn't have all the information early on, and they do it with coronavirus, right? So
Sure.
that changes every day. Every day it's a new thing you're supposed to do or you're not supposed to do, or you're supposed to wear a mask, or wait a minute, no, don't wear the mask because that's not helpful. And wait a minute, no, go back and do wear the mask, but now you can wear a sock over your face, or you can use you can use a piece of silk thong to put over your face, and somehow that's supposed to stop a disease. And they don't have a problem saying, oh, well, the data changed, so we changed our point of view on it. Well,
Sure.
how about when you put something out that's blatantly wrong, and later it comes to pass that it's proven to be wrong?
Yep.
I don't see any retractions coming out. I don't see them coming back and making that correction, saying, "Hey, yeah, we just didn't have enough data before we presented this this story to you without all the facts, and now that we've learned more, we'd like to change that up a little bit." It's it's an obvious bias. It's a pick and choose, and it's whatever's trending and popular at the moment is what the media is going to report on, and unfortunately, social media determines what's trending and what's popular. And the more that they take ideas away, and I know we're going to get to that in just a moment, but the more that they suppress opinions of folks, then the more you're going to see a one-sided journalism, one-sided broadcasting of supposedly what's going on in America today.
Yeah, and that's one of the points. I'm glad you brought that up that I wanted to make too. Is both of us are about the same age, and reporting even in our era is much different from what our parents had, where journalists seem to, back in the day, your Walter Cronkites, all these other people, prided themselves on calling it down the middle and being journalists, reporters, talking about the truth, whether it agreed with what they said or not, whether it was uncomfortable or not. We used to be able to say things that maybe weren't comfortable, maybe offensive to some, without everybody wanting to cancel you. There's I've had people that have told me over and over again, man, I'd love to come on your podcast and talk about my story, but I'm so afraid that if somebody knows my name or figures out who I am, they're going to call my employer and I'm going to lose my job. Well, if they're making a statement that's true in their opinion and it's not hate-based, then who cares? Like, just because it differs from you, that's a problem, and we're going to try to get somebody fired? That's stupid. And our society has gotten so dumbed down, pussified, all these other things. My son's football coach, because yes, we're actually doing football where I live, and actually hitting each other, said something last night that really kind of struck with me in practice. Is football and sports are one of the few places that are left in America where you have to earn it, where you have to, kind of really not be offended if somebody calls you an MF or calls you stupid or slow or does these things to push you to be better. And that to me is the problem that we have these days, is just, now we can't say anything to offend somebody or make somebody feel uncomfortable because we'll lose our job and our livelihood. That's so stupid. So it's so stupid. Well, again, it's just aggravating.
Well, strong liberal views seem to be the only thing that you can say nowadays. And if you're not speaking strong liberal views, then we're finding that people they're censoring themselves more than anything. As a matter of fact, it's funny. I saw a podcast and they were talking about a Cato Institute study, and this just came out a few days ago. And the study says that 62% of Americans, now this isn't of one group or the other, 62% roughly in the studies that they did, 62% were afraid to reveal any of their political standings or their political leanings in fear of losing their job. So what that points to with me is that, okay, if you've got Facebook and you've got these big organizations out there that are supporting these liberal views, it's not 62%. This 62% number is not liberals that are afraid to say that they're liberals. These are silent conservatives. These are people that have more conservative leaning values. And I'm not saying they're far right. I'm not saying they're Republicans. I'm saying they could even be moderates or middle, center left, center right. But 62% is a big number on any poll that's done with any kind of credibility. And there's a lot more studies involved in this particular push that they made from the Cato Institute. That was, again, it was studying, are people afraid of losing their jobs, basically, or being fired, and what's the likelihood of having that done to you based on your political views and your political donorship. And so yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem. I'm going to let you talk about that study that I just put out there with the 62%. You can kind of give some of your feedback on that as well. And then I have one more thing to address before we get into our false outrage.
Sure. And Brian, yeah, you're right. Libertarian views, man, those are seen as crazy people. We can, and that brings me to exactly something I want to talk about. So thanks for that. And you're also right, Brian. I'm going to put this other comment back up about it is much easier to cancel people than address their positions. The easy button, we've talked about echo chambers frequently on this podcast. Anybody that's halfway intelligent can sit down with somebody of an opposing view and probably have dinner with them, probably have their kids over to the house, probably go swimming, do all these other things and be okay and be able to talk to one another. But what we have is, again, going back to the sissification of America so we don't get banned from me saying bad words constantly. We have this problem where if you don't agree, then you're a bad person. And it's much harder to work through things and have a constructive conversation than it is just to agree and move on. Like you said, certain points of views are being pushed. And the hit on your 62%, I think you're absolutely right, brother. It's sad. One of my buddies, he's my best friend in the world, Chad. He is one of the most intelligent people I know. He has great viewpoints on a lot of things. He's very middle of the road, but he will not come on because of that exact reason, because he's afraid that somebody will say something to his employer if he says a little something that's a little offensive and he may lose his job, which is a very well-paid job. Me, luckily, the company I work for, it's not hard to figure it out. And, you being a business owner, we kind of have benefits of being able to say what we want to a point as long as we don't cross those lines, which we don't anyways offline from the podcast. What you see is what you get from us, whether it's online or in person. And 62%, that's a lot of people. I have a very good friend, Derek, that he has some views that are very different from a lot of his friends, and he's afraid to say them out loud because he's afraid he's going to be called certain things. I don't want to say too much to give away his true identity, but he calls me a lot to get advice about things, and we're very opposite spectrums politically. But he calls me a lot of times to get advice about, kind of things he's dealing with, because he knows I'm going to shoot him straight and I'm not going to jump down his throat if he disagrees with me or vice versa. And that's the America we're in, man. We're very tribal. We're tribal off race. We're tribal off political parties. I mean, it goes all the way down to sports teams. F you, you're a Georgia Tech fan or you're a Georgia fan. I can't mess with you. You're an idiot. Dude, it kills me. Brian, I believe that James and I have had this conversation, I believe, offline.
Absolutely.
Where you've had recently to say, hey, just so you know, we've seen some stuff. We're pretty conservative too, so we love to frequent your business. It shouldn't be that way either way. I mean, dude, you and I had this conversation about the MMA world and how political views seem to be one way. I don't want to get into that too much because it is right in what you do for a business. But yeah, it's sad that people, they feel like they have to quantify their beliefs to even come through there. I mean, I'll still go to certain places if their food's good and they're nice to me, just because, as long as they stop, just because they feel a certain way and vote for a certain person, I'm not necessarily going to not frequent their business. Now, if you say all cops are bastards or, Republicans or white supremacists, yeah, I'm not going to frequent your business, duh. But if your food's good and you treat my family right, I'll come through. I don't care how you vote. So, sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, and then the number that we're talking about here that we're even speaking on, this is from a fairly left leaning outlet. So and there was a really good study. I mean, when you read it, it's about what you see in daily life. So there was nothing in the article that stood out to me that where I can't look outside the doors into society and see that this is exactly what you're seeing, and it makes a lot of sense. The other one that I wanted to get to real quick, though, is that this is taking taking freedom of speech or the quieting of freedom of speech to a whole new level, I think. So nowadays you're not allowed to have opinions regardless of what positions you're in. And this one is directly related to the current president right now. The president made a statement, and I didn't dig into exactly which social media platforms did what exactly in response to this, but it was reported that the president was addressing in one of his briefings the potential, I guess it was a small clip taken from it, the potential of fraud being prevalent in mail-in voting, right? And that there would potentially be some issues.
Sure.
And that I want to say he made the statement that it'll be the most fraudulent election of all time. if we had to do it by mail-in voting. And so, this is obviously, I mean, any rational person that's listening to this is obviously the president is in a position where he's had so much opposition. He's had, what he calls these witch hunts, which I tend to agree with him. I mean, we had the collusion, we had Ukraine, we had this and that, and then impeachment, and all of which failed, right? Most of it turned up with zero evidence of anything. And, so he has a reason to be skeptical of a lot of things right now. And I think that's a very rational statement to make. I don't even think that falls along party lines. He has a reason to think that there may be some voter fraud going on with the side of the aisle that seems to be pushing mail-in voting the most. And it's to be honest with you, it's not the Republicans that are doing it. However, when he put this out, this has now made it to the world of fact checking, right? You can fact check people's opinions. So he said this would be one of the greatest frauds of all time, and they fact checked him and said there's no specific evidence or research papers to show that that's the case. So we're going to delete this and not let you say it. And that is we are tiptoeing into a dangerous realm when someone that may be in a position to not have every single statistical fact, but that sees something that's clearly going on is not allowed to bring that to attention. I mean, I don't know where we go from there.
Sure. Absolutely. So here's the funny thing you say that. So I recently moved from one county to another and in Georgia. And when I moved, I should have saved the ballot that came into me. I received an absentee ballot for my former county that I lived in, right? And I could have voted and I could have sent that in, even though I don't live in that county anymore. I could have absolutely sent it in and probably still gotten away with voting in my current county, but I did not. And with all that said, at least I'm an honest person. I actually had a friend that was running for election in that county that was in my old district where I lived. And so I had every reason to want to cast a vote for him, right? He's my buddy. He's my friend. I've known him for a long time. But yet I didn't because I knew it wasn't the right thing to do, right? And unfortunately, you're not going to see that. You can go back and look at the articles, all throughout the country of where we've had issues with people doing these mail-in ballots and many ballots getting showed as fraudulent and all those other things. And that's a huge problem, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an absolute logical statement to make. The fact that social media, which is where most of the media comes from now, we'll just be honest. That's where people get that. That's where the general public, especially folks that don't want to look into things any further than what they hear on TV or, Facebook or whatnot. This is where they get all their information from. And now they're deciding not only, it's not like the president said that Joe Biden was convicted of some heinous crime last year. And we obviously know that's not true. So Facebook comes on there and says, you know what, this is not a true statement. We're going to block like this whole content from being up here on the site. That's not what they're doing. They're taking opinions. Like when someone says, well, I think that there could be fraud in this next election due to mail-in ballots. And they're saying, wait a minute, no, that's not a proven fact. So we're not going to allow you to even say that you think that's your opinion. This is extra dangerous. And, if something doesn't get done about this before too long, not only do you have thought police, I mean, you're not allowed to have an internal opinion about anything. And, how dare you say it? And this goes back to our previous topic. If you do say it, you could be in jeopardy of losing your job or, being doxxed in various different ways. So.
Well, and that's a huge problem, man, with just not being able to state your opinion and say the things that you need to say to, just express yourself at this point, and without having, the horde mentality, the hive mind mentality, people are just, they're vilified for it, and it's super unfortunate. And I'd like to know if any of our viewers, if you've had any experience with this or had any issues with this comment, let us know about what was said, how it was said, how it affected you, so we can. If you don't want us to say your name, we won't. But please let us know. And to hit on the next topic, man, this is the one. So the fact checking thing that you kind of just hit on. So I guess it's the same topic. Is, to me, it seems to be that we're only fact checking things that either A, go against Democrats, or B, that are said by Republicans at this point. And it's a problem. It's a huge problem. We can talk about the Bill Clinton thing has gotten fact checked on Facebook about him giving somebody a massage and being on Epstein's jet 20 times. And they're literally fact checking it because they're like, well, we know he was on Epstein's jet. We just don't know how many times. Give me a break, bro. Give me a break. Yeah. It's ridiculous. You know he's been there, so why are we doing that? Kamala Harris, she talked about getting high while listening to Snoop Dogg and Tupac, even though she went to college in the 80s. She talked about getting high in college. And because somebody put up a post that said she smoked weed in college while listening to these things, that they showed that as not to be true, even though it was obvious that she was not in college at the same time as Tupac, and all this other stuff was coming around and coming up because Tupac was in my era. That was in the 90s. And obviously,
yeah, I don't think those guys were even, those songs were even recorded yet that she was talking about listening to at the point where she was graduating from college, smoking some weed.
Correct. I mean, and dude, congratulations, you smoke weed. But I mean, it's like, what are we doing? Like, I don't know. I think Facebook, honestly, in my opinion, and social media and the media is, to me, doing their opponents more of a favor long term, because I think people are going to get sick of it and they're going to see it that it's so blatant, like Jeremy said earlier, that they're going to be like, you know what? The Republicans were right. Oh, you know what? These conservatives were right. Oh, these other people in the middle, they were right. The far left's not.
Well, this 62% number that we just talked about is expressing exactly what you just said. I believe that is where this 62% number comes from with this Cato study. I think it's it's absolutely, people are seeing it. It's the downfall of the mass communication, social media, everything being at a fingertip, touch of a button. At the same time that it gets a lot of information out there, and I think a lot of these groups are able to steer things in the direction of their beliefs. I think it'll also be their downfall. As the exposure to it, the more you see it, I just don't think the general public lacks that kind of brain function. I think the general public is much smarter than the media gives them credit for, and it's pretty obvious when you see negative this, negative that, the nation's this, the nation's that, America is not a good place, America's horrible, this, and to be honest with you, I believe probably 80% of the populace does not believe anything like that. But if you listen to the media on a daily basis, you would think that 100% of Americans hate the place. It's just not true.
Sure, and I think, you're extremists. I think if you had to put a number on it, I think, 10% one way, 10% the other. And then I think, like you said, 80%. I think most of us are probably in the middle and do truly agree with each other on 95% of the issues. But I think some people are so scared because of their, I hate to use this word, but you see all the time, their tribe that they run around with, their group they run around with. Be like, oh, well, I may feel this way and I hang out with James and Eric on occasion. A lot of people are going to be mad if they know that I hang out with them. Like, don't tag me on Facebook. Don't say that you're my friend because my people are going to look at me funny. Bro, why do you care? But I get that that's a real thing because of employers and social groups and all those other things that you have to be around. But that's where we're at as a culture, and it's unfortunate. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people recently, especially since this podcast started, about them telling me that they appreciate that we're kind of calling things down the middle, that we're giving them a voice and things to say. And I'm sorry, I keep looking down, I'm trying to put people's comments up. Eric, you're right. America is the most hated place that people won't leave. Facts. But that's kind of where we're at, man. People are afraid to sit down and talk to each other and afraid to just, have dialogue. And that's unfortunate, man.
Hey, here's a good one for you. I remembered this. I read this day before yesterday. The Babylon Bee actually had some censorship going on for its satire pieces. And, if people don't know about the Babylon Bee, most everyone does. The Babylon Bee it's more of a conservative leaning satire group that uses a lot of what you would call Democrat or left-leaning situations to create satire. It's just, it's good fun. It's obvious satire. We're gotten to a point where the Babylon Bee is being censored because they're being fact-checked on satire. You can't make this shit up, man.
No, it's like fact-checking The Onion. Even though they have put out some things that you wouldn't think, like about Aunt Jemima getting canceled, even though that actually did happen. They put out an article saying that, oh, my God, they got canceled. And then here we go, like an hour or two later, it actually happens. And, it's crazy how things go on. That's crazy what Brian said in other countries. The media portrays American conservatives as a protagonist, right-wing racists who are repressing others. You constantly see, the rich being associated with right-wing people, and there are all these bad things about them. And these billionaires and millionaires, well, billionaires give millionaires jobs, millionaires give hundreds of thousands if those are jobs, and then so on and so forth. And it's just funny how people they kind of bite the hand that feeds them. It's amazing. In other countries, will absolutely do what they can to make America look like we suck, even though we've only been around for a few hundred years at this point. We're so far ahead of everybody. And I think to go to some earlier comments that James was saying, it's just straight envy from other people in other countries.
Yeah, well, Eric had said it, and you posted it up there a minute ago. America, the most hated place that people won't leave. Not only that, it seems to be the most hated place that everyone's trying to flee their country and get into.
Yep.
And if we didn't have COVID, we'd still. I mean, of course, numbers have slowed down because we're just not letting that much air travel come around from other countries. But I mean, people pay a lot of money to get into this place, and if it's that bad, can't you find another place to go? I mean, Barbados or, Bermuda or something like that. Find another place to go if this place is so terrible. But of course, we know that's not real. And we know that that's just what the media portrays. You'd sound silly if you walked out in in any kind of, civil debate or any kind of intellectual conversation and use that phrase. Yeah, well, if you hate America so bad, why don't you just leave? I mean, nobody's leaving here. Nobody's doing that.
No.
Everybody likes to enjoy the freedoms that they have. And if they're successful and they make money here, they like to enjoy that. Some of those very people that enjoy those successes also will vote for legislators that seem to be in not agreement with those successes. And to me, it's mind blowing. I can't imagine a business owner, especially a small business owner in the United States, that would be voting for any sort of further socialist installment here in the United States. That it's mind-boggling to me.
Sure, and you know what? That brings me to a point. I got a question for you to get your input because I haven't asked you this personally yet. So there's been a lot of celebrities saying that they're leaving California, that they're leaving New York. There's a couple that come to mind. Joe Rogan being one. He's leaving California, moving to Texas. If y'all go check his pages out, he's actually building a studio out in Texas. What's your opinion on these people that have very liberal mindsets, right? That voted for all these policies in place, moving to places like where we live. And what do you think that they should do when they do move to those places?
So I think what you'll probably see is what we don't want to see. You'll probably see them move to another place only to try to make it into, we're talking about California, obviously, to make it into California. That they want to go somewhere else and spread California back into that. It sounds like, on the surface, they may say they want to move because it's become hard on them or it's become expensive or the policies there or whatnot. But they'll sure enough move into these other states. They're not going to change their political affiliation. They'll probably continue to keep voting the same way they always have. They'll support the same causes they always have. And ultimately, they'll end up making where they're at another unlivable place. And they'll want to move out. And, it's a huge shame. The state of California is a beautiful place, especially Northern California. There's a lot of great, geographical structures there, that natural environments, the redwood forest, things like that. There's tons of beautiful places up there. And it's such a shame to see it destroyed to the degree that it has been by policymakers who just who dream of this. Let's live in a world where no one has any kind of hardship whatsoever. And that's just not reality. I mean, throughout time, humans have just proven that they define their reality through the hardship and the overcoming of hardship. And that's what makes us better as a society overall.
Yeah, 100%. And kind of hit on something, where I'm at with it, taking it from one extreme. So you and I are obviously huge pro Second Amendment guys. We love our guns. We love all those things. So if I got a job offer in New York City for $1 million a year, which will probably buy me, a 500 square foot apartment up there. But if I got a job offer in New York and I accepted it and I said, you know what, I'm going to move into New York City because my job requires it and all these other things because I made that choice, I'm not going to bring my guns up there and, buck their laws and all this other stuff because I know that moving there, that's what the rule of the land is, the law of the land is. And it's my choice to move there. So why am I trying to go there and change their stuff? Can I vote my own way? Sure. But, people that just move from one place to another and expect that place to adapt to them, it's asinine, it's stupid, and that's the America we're in. Unfortunately, or people are like, oh, you got to agree with what I'm doing, and we've got to do what I want, because I'm entitled to this. And it's crazy. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me.
Well, and to speak to that point, I haven't been to Kroger. I have a Kroger next door to my studio here.
Yeah.
And I frequent it a lot because it's extra convenient. I can walk down there between classes and do things and
Yep.
And pick up, some, things here and there and supplies for the gym and supplies for the studio here. And I haven't been since they implemented this supposed mask mandate, which I know a lot of people still go in there without mask on and they don't really say anything to them. But I haven't been down there since then because, that's up to me. If that's their rule and I know what the rule is, just like you not move, if you were to move to New York, you weren't going to try to buck all their laws because you made the choice to move there. You're making the choice to go be a part of that system. And the same way with Kroger, I'm not going to walk down here to this Kroger and not have a mask on just try to show that I can do it. I'm just not going to go.
Right.
And I have that choice to just not go. And so, and that's what I've been doing, and it's been more difficult on me getting stuff, but I've managed. So we're still getting along down here.
Oh yeah, and that's the problem. I think where you have people, and this will take us right to our next topic: the false outrage. Right. So these people, the false, the faux outrage, whatever you want to call it, the mask is one of those things. We can all have our opinions about the mask thing. That's fine. But these people are like, oh my God, this business has this mandate and blah 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 blah. You just simplified it for everybody, and I'm 100% with you. As a private business, they have the right to refuse, within reason, any business coming into their store. If they want to do what they feel like is protecting their employees, what they feel like is best for their business, well, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. It's pretty simple. Don't cuss out the employees. It's not their fault. Don't be outraged because they tried to tell you what their employer is telling them to do. Mind you, they're gainfully employed. They're working, and you're giving them shit for it. That's not cool. And it drives me so crazy that, people are this way towards people. It's mind-blowing. And you see it from both sides. Like, oh, my wife and, her field of work, she had somebody come in there just complaining that they didn't have plexiglass up in front of their receptionist. And she's like, well, we're doing this, that, and the other, and you knew this coming into it. We have on our website, like, what we've done, and you're going to come in and be outraged because they didn't do something that fits you. Go somewhere else. That's just my opinion. And these people are like,
yeah, I've thought several times about putting a sign on our door that says "No mask allowed." To see how that goes over. I mean, I guess I can do that just like someone else can say that mask. It's mandatory that you wear a mask inside their building or their store. Or their place of business. So maybe we'll try that out today and see how that goes.
You'll make the news, or you'll at least make Facebook. People love putting stuff like that out. And another point Brian made, you blame CNN for a lot of left viewpoints. We see it without a doubt when we travel overseas. I've actually had a lot of friends that are in the military and do private contracting overseas that have said the same thing. There's a very anti-American, a very nationalist vibe. I don't have any issue with the word nationalist because I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting your country to be the best. It's just like, being on, going back, if you want to be tribal about it, going back to a football team and wanting to be on the best football team and contributing everything you got to make that team better. That's what America's built on, in my opinion. That's my America. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but that's where I am. And
well, I'm going to use a phrase. I'm going to use a reference that everyone can relate to. Okay. And this is across the board. I think everyone can get this one. If you've ever seen the movie, the original movie, The Incredibles, I think at one point he states in that movie, he says, if everyone is special, then no one is special. And that seems to be what the United States is, or the big push is right now. Not the United States, factions within the United States seem to be pushing for this, is that we want to make everyone equal. And I've said this before, the whole equality push for, equal pay, equal this, equal that, whatnot. What that really means is it doesn't mean people have the opportunity to become equally rich. It means that 9 times out of 10, they're going to become equally poor. And so when you have a society that's built on the idea, not that the strong can't win, but that the weak can't lose, then you're going to end up with a mediocre society. You're going to end up with stifling of technology, stifling of, any movement forward, any kind of real progress, we'll say, and industry gets stifled a lot as well. So, there's a lot of repercussions, and there's a lot of things that happen that you might, or that would be the result of that you might not think initially when we start talking about these low level grades of censorship. These outrage mobs that are pushing legislation based on people's hard feelings and getting people all emotional. These things have real consequences down the road, and I can only hope that what you said earlier, with them exposing themselves, and that eventually everyone will wake up and say, "Hey, listen, we're tired. This is silly at this point. Like, we're tired of seeing this. This is not how I believe." Hopefully that becomes the case, and America wakes up one day and we can get this back rolling.
Well, I think you're starting to see it, man. To be honest with you, shout out to one of Georgia's own, Justin Fields. He went to my alma mater. He went to Harrison High School. He plays for Ohio State now. He's a quarterback. He transferred there from UGA. I would venture to say he's probably not a Trump supporter. I actually know his dad by proxy. Good guy. So I could pretty much say they don't support that, which is fine. Don't care. But he started a petition saying, "We want to play. We want to play football. We want to play." Thousands of athletes signed it. Thousands of people signed it because, going back to what I said earlier, they're seeing the media weaponize their political aspirations or who they want to see win an election by, in my opinion, sabotaging things like football and sports and schools and all these other things to make it look like someone's fault when it's really not anyone's fault but China. And, you're seeing these athletes wake up. The Big Ten, from the latest reports today and yesterday, is they're looking at uncanceling football and going back because they're getting so much crap from all these parents that they want their kids to play. Because, to be quite frank, like I said in a personal post of mine today, football, sports, and these things are all a lot of these kids have. Their only shot to make it, because of their circumstances, if I want to sound liberal for a minute, because of where they came from, their only chance they ever have is football, because that's all they know. If they go back to their homes and they go back to all these places, they're immediately back in the hood. They're back around all these other people exposed to this virus that, so many people are freaked out about. They don't care about their safety that far. They just want to cancel football and not really think about what's actually best for these kids long term. It's sickening. Going back to what our coach said last night about football, most student athletes have problems in the off season when they're not playing their sport, when they're not doing their thing, because a lot of these kids need and relish the discipline that comes from these sports, and their coaches riding their ass and their parents riding their ass to get them to concentrate on their schoolwork so they can in fact play sports. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of this pushback from these athletes and from these people that come from all aspects of life, because they're sick of it, and they are starting to in fact see that the media is using them.
I don't mind the devil's workshop, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the old saying, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. These people are they're trying to do their thing. And Jeremy, I'd be willing to bet the respiratory therapist that said that, because I've heard that frequently from people in the know. They won't say anything publicly because they can't, because they'll get fired, because the CEO of their company, who probably has certain beliefs, will tell them that's wrong and they shouldn't say things like that, even though they know in fact that it is right. But again, why are we not allowed to say these things? Because there's nothing dangerous about saying that. It's an opinion. It's from somebody that's a professional. They're a respiratory therapist. They should be allowed to state their professional opinion. So
yeah,
stay-at-home moms are the biggest virologists and all these other things that I've seen lately on Facebook. So why can't a respiratory therapist say something? It's nuts.
Yeah, I live in my own bubble. I don't know people that wear masks.
Right.
I don't hang out with people that wear masks. If I didn't see people walking around this parking lot out here outside the studio wearing masks, I wouldn't even know it was still a thing. Matter of fact, 2 days ago, I looked up and realized, I was like, oh, I guess that's still a thing. People are still doing the mask thing. It's I guess apparently I live in my own bubble. I've not been affected by it. I don't know anyone that's been affected by it. And I'm not saying it's not a real thing. Sure. I'm just saying you got to use some common sense. You got to take some risk here and there in life. And if we're getting to a point where you can't, manage risk on your own, or if you think that there's actually going to be a life where there is no risk, then, we obviously know that's not the case. So.
Yeah, and to your point, so people don't think we're just being mean. I actually know two people that have had it. One of whom early on got it. They were on a respirator for a long time. However, this person was there. God bless them if they see this. I don't care. They're overweight. They have type 2 diabetes. They have asthma. They had pneumonia last year. Had all the stuff. Then they got COVID, and they were on a ventilator for like 24 days. This was in the early goings on of all this COVID stuff, and that's the first thing they did was put you on a ventilator, which now we know is not the treatment that anybody does. And he got really sick, and he almost died. He was in a coma for the 20-something days. Thank God he's alive. He's doing good. And even closer to home, my mother-in-law got it. And she may watch this. Again, I don't care because there's nothing I won't say to her face. My wife and I said all along, if anybody in our family was going to get it, it would be her just because of her lifestyle. And lo and behold, she got it. She was in the ER for a few days. Thankfully, she got it later on down the road where they had better treatment plans and things, and they gave her the right treatment, and she was out of the hospital in 4 or 5 days. Is it a real thing? I don't think any of us dispute that. Is it being weaponized and used by the media and by politicians? I think anybody that says no to that is wrong, and they're living in a bubble to that point. It's crazy. And, people got to understand that, be reasonable, think, look what's going on around you, and you'll be okay.
Yeah. And we don't just bring this up arbitrarily. These things all tie together. I mean, this is all one great big form of control, and what you get to see and what you think, and ultimately it'll begin to shape and it'll mold you, especially younger folks and the youth. They're gonna get to see this. And what do you hear most every day? You hear that anyone that is not going 100% along with what the media determines is God's word, then those are bad people that don't care about us. And these are mean people, and these are people that don't care about others, and they're selfish. And this is what's being taught to our young people. And if they're not smart enough, if they're not old enough or wise enough to be able to sift through that information and make their own, develop their own opinions on it, then they're going to grow up thinking that exactly what the media portrays every day is what you should be thinking, and it's a sad thing that we're seeing.
Yeah, it absolutely is a sad thing that's going on, and the kind of I just wrap it up for the day, or to get it going that direction. So, I want to bring up James's point about we need education reform countrywide, and the left's been teaching the exact issues to our kids from kindergarten to college. That's part of being, a parent. You guys, parents, be sure you're talking to your kids about what goes on in school, not just what's being taught by their teachers, what they're hearing from their friends, from fellow students and things like that. That's the stuff we need to be outraged about. That's the stuff we need to be involved in. That's how we shape the future, is through our kids. This false outrage of, this unfortunate thing that happened where in North Carolina, where that young man got shot on his bike and killed. People were weaponizing that kid, that his death, to fit a certain narrative, which I didn't agree with. I thought it was crap to compare it to protests and all these other things that are going on in media coverage, because, I put up another post, 800 and something kids are murdered each year that are under 16. Where are all those posts on Facebook? Why are these people claiming to be outraged? Well, they're really not. It's a popular thing for them to say, just like on both sides, and that's why they're saying it. That's why they're reposting it. And there may be some people that are genuinely outraged, and people that watch this that posted about that kid. Just get what I'm telling you, that unless you're actually doing something to fix the problems, to fix the outrage, asking for legislation, to go back to one of your very early points, asking for these things to be fixed, going out in the communities and trying to do these things, don't pretend like you're really ticked off. If you're not going to do anything about it, you're not really that angry. That's in my opinion.
Look, and what kind of lesson are we teaching if we allow so the federal government or your local city, county government is going to change some kind of law because you went and burned their building down? That is never going to happen. And I hope to God they don't change any legislation based on that being the protest point, because what is that teaching everyone else? That's teaching the generations beyond us that, well, if you don't like what's going on, you can just pitch a tantrum. Of course, I'm not speaking anything new that hasn't been going on forever, but it seems to be getting worse, right? And hopefully they won't change any laws based on this. I mean, this is It would be a shame to see someone go out and burn a federal building down, and then the federal government go, oh, well, that was the thing. That was the catalyst that made us really want to go change this law and really cater to what these people are asking for. It seems to be senseless violence on the street. Obviously, there's an agenda for it. I think the agenda more than anything is to oust the administration, to say, look how bad the United States is doing during this administration, when I think any logical or reasonable person can see that for especially the last 3 years of growth the United States have had, we've been in a very strong position economically, on trade, on many other things. Deregulation has caused, the economy to boom. Jobs have came back. Unemployment was at all-time lows. And then COVID happened, and the media's explosion of trying to make COVID into, the Black Plague and something that was going to destroy the entire globe, which it has failed to do, and it doesn't look like it's going to. That's an obvious reason as to why that we've had the dip off, and it hasn't even been much of a dip off in our economic status right now. But so I just trust that the people are smart enough to see these ploys and these kind of what I consider to just be extremely deceptive strategies that media companies are using to try to manipulate people into doing their agenda for whatever reason that is.
Yeah, and to hit exactly what you were talking about, Jeremy, again, if they promoted better health amongst the citizens, they couldn't push so much fear with the virus or disease. Absolute facts. There are people that are at risk, and things like that where they probably should isolate themselves. Your older populations, you have neighbors and friends that have autoimmune diseases, and I get why they're scared. I understand them. But, those people that are maybe obese or out of shape or overweight or pre-diabetic and all these other things. Yeah, I mean, when have you heard the news say, get in the gym? Not even get in the gym. Go run. Go outside. Go swimming. Go hiking. Go do all these things that don't require you to be around other people, and actually get in shape to maybe make your immunity better so you don't get sick in the first place. Because guess what? Just because you've been exposed to a virus or a bacteria doesn't mean you're going to get it. Google how much bacteria is on my body right now, and your mind will be blown. You probably have E. coli floating around on your skin. You probably have some type of disease floating around on you.
It's in the millions or billions, isn't it, of bacteria and viruses that you take into your system every day?
Exactly.
It's an astronomical number.
Yep. And a lot of people let the media drive how they feel. They let the little box on their TV or their computer screen dictate how they feel that day, instead of just using common sense and exercising that and moving on. And that's just a huge problem that we have. And I think one thing we learned from today is that I think America is getting sick of it. They're getting sick of being used by the media. I think certain groups of people, I think minorities are sick of being used by the media. I think, Republicans are sick of being used. I think parents of children are sick of seeing their children get used, their school districts.
I think Democrats are sick and tired of being what used to be real Democrats. I don't think they exist anymore. No. I mean, I would have to say Democrats probably have taken the hardest hit in all of this. I don't even think there is a Democrat Party anymore. I think it's just far left progressives now. So, the poor actual moderate Democrats that exist or that used to exist, I feel sorry for those guys.
Yep, absolutely agree, man. Absolutely agree. Aaron, we're using too much common sense right now, Brian. Yeah, do jujitsu to build your humanity. I would say another HU word is build your humility. There's nowhere I've been humbled more than on a mat or in a ring when I'm getting my butt whooped by somebody that's far bigger, or not even bigger, better than me, just a better person than me. And yeah, you're right. We don't see that enough, man. It's just to kind of go full circle. We're just not seeing it where we're being taught humanity and humility. And on the flip side, both of those things go into confidence down the road. They go into you being a well-adjusted person. They go into you being a business owner, having bigger aspirations than just, what your parents did or your friends are doing. It pushes you to be better. And that's why our country, if you look at the number behind me, since 1776, there's countries that have been around for hundreds of years more, if not 1,000 years more than us, that have risen and fallen and never progressed to where we did. Are we perfect? Is our history perfect? No. Did we, you hear people, we're on stolen land. Were things that happened to American Indians because we settled here horrible? Absolutely. And that's why I think we should have statues up of that stuff that happened to say, you know what? Yeah, this did happen. This was bad. Same thing with the Confederate statues. Was that the right thing to do in our history? No, in my opinion, it wasn't. but you need to have those reminders up. So you know what? People can go tell their kids, hey, son, hey, daughter, this is what happened. This is how it happened. And this is why this monument's here, is for us to learn from it. Nazi Germany, one of the first things they did was start knocking down statues and killing their history, and it ruined their country. And we saw what happened to the Jewish people after that. And that can happen here. Anybody that thinks it can't happen here is crazy. Go look at what's going on in China with Christians being persecuted right now and put in prison. It can happen in modern society, period.
Well, and if the argument is that we're living on stolen land, everyone's living on stolen land in a technical way. So we should just bulldoze all of it down, all of New York City. We should bulldoze everything down and go back to living in the woods. And then you'll still be living on stolen land. So I don't know what the answer for that is. It's a ridiculous, redundant argument that just tends to just turn circles and turn circles and turn circles. And I think it's designed that way. I think it's designed to just spin in a circle, and there's never really any kind of outcome, or there's never any escape from the merry-go-round. And so you just keep recycling it, rehashing it over and over and over. And, and it keeps everybody in turmoil. It keeps everybody argumentative. It's a great way to divide people. And ultimately, it's a great way to keep a party system so that you have voters on both sides. Yeah.
And we could go on and on about that's right. Yeah, we stole it from the Tyrannosaurus Rex, man. We should give it back to the dinosaurs.
Well, I want to go to what Brian said a moment ago. Yeah, to change it to a more lighthearted subject. Yeah, everyone should just do jiu-jitsu. I don't have these problems usually in jiu-jitsu class.
Yeah, exactly. If everybody did jiu-jitsu, yeah, right. Everybody gets along. Everybody high-fives each other, hugs each other. Man, good job. Thanks for choking me unconscious, and everybody's cool with it. Been there. I've been knocked out by people sparring before. I've gotten flash KO'd 2 times, which I'm telling myself, but it happened. But I was cool with them, and it's just one of those things. It's the same thing on the football field. That's why our kids need to be around each other. These kids come from all different regions and groups and demographics. And amazingly, they get along and they don't argue about political parties. I don't know. So
yeah, it's amazing. There's places where politics doesn't exist, like your local, should be your local recreation park. Maybe not the park itself, but usually the kids on the field, they don't have any of that stuff in their head. They just go out and do what they're supposed to do, and they have a great time. So there is proof that it exists out there somewhere, and it usually ends up in a good result. So.
Yep. Brian said, meant to say build your immunity. Texting too fast. Either way, you gave us a good topic to talk about. So thanks for that. Immunity. Absolutely. Yeah. Being out there, you got to get dirty, man. Got to build it up. It's a well-known fact. So let's do a quick recap about what all we talked about. We'll wrap it up, I guess, for today so we can have some good topics for next week. Hopefully, we're going to have another guest next week. It should be good. Again, we talked about, UFC 252, Stipe DC, Marlon Vera, and Sean O'Malley, the great card. Today, we talked a little bit of bias reporting. Go back to the first part of the podcast to check that out. Also covered a little bit of fact-checking, attacks only on liberal policy and candidates and the difference in reporting today's society, and then a little bit on the false rage. So y'all go back, check out everything we talked about today. Thanks for all the audience interaction. We had a ton again today, which we love that. So thank you. And I'm going to leave the last word with James for today, and we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah, so we'll shout out to our sponsors one more time. You'll see the banner running at the bottom of the screen. North Cobb Spine and Nerve made some generous donations to us. That's northcobbspine.com. Again, that's northcobbspine.com. Reach out to those guys for any chiropractic and physical medicine needs. And then these great art pieces behind us. We'll mention them at least one more time here. Made by Chantel. That's Chantel at chantelcreations.com. That's SHANTEL at chantelcreations.com. So really appreciate these donations that we've got. And we appreciate all the support from the viewers. Great to see the comments that was rolling in today. And it helps us keep moving along here. So the more interaction that we can get for all you guys that are still tuned in, just feel free to jump in, throw some topics at us. If you have ideas for next week, go ahead and throw them in there. These videos stay up online, so you can catch them on YouTube and Facebook. Comment on them, even if it's next week sometime when you realize that it pops up on your news feed. Go in there and comment something that you'd like to see us talk about, or something that you feel like would be important for the public to hear. And we definitely would appreciate any of the content suggestions. And then other than that, guys, just thanks for the support, and keep tuning into us if you can. We'll try to get some more guests on here so you don't have to listen to us ramble on for too long.
Yeah. I mean, you said it best. Catch us next week. I think we're looking at Monday next week. Hopefully, that's when our guests can come on. So check us out. We'll post it up as soon as we have the time. And again, thanks to everybody that listens, watches, comments, and we'll see y'all next week.